All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Kourtney Branagan. I am coming to you live from my sweltering hot house. I'm sure many of you are in the same position, or maybe you luckily got to head outside into the shade with a nice, cool, cold beverage. I'm going to spend an hour with you this evening answering your questions. We've had a few guests submit some questions ahead of time, some constituents, so I'll get to those first and then I'll get to yours. So first, I want to just take a moment to acknowledge the land. So my family came to Canada and settled on Treaty 6 land, both in Saskatchewan and in Alberta. My parents moved us to Calgary before I started kindergarten, and I've chosen to stay here since. Ward 11, here in Calgary, is one small corner of Treaty 7 land. And as immediate neighbors of the Tsuut'ina Nation, I recognize that all residents of Ward 11 live, work, and play on the traditional territories of the Tsuut'ina, the Blackfoot Confederacy, and the Ehe Nakota Nation, and Métis Nation Region 3. As neighbors, we're stewards to the prosperous and just future for Indigenous Canadians, including urban Indigenous who live across Calgary and in Treaty 7 territory. I want to take a moment to thank those who are making tonight possible. I want to thank Ryan, who's behind the camera, who's been my tech support and will be supporting this evening as well. I'd like to thank Melanie, who's going to be one of the offline moderators, viewing your questions and making sure those get to me. I'd like to thank my bonus daughter, who's also one of the online or offline moderators. And I'll recognize my partner, who graciously took the dogs out of the house so that they are not extra guests this evening. So first, I will introduce myself, but before that, you have an opportunity to submit your questions on any of the platforms that you're visiting tonight. I also have a bucket of hot list topics that I can pull from this evening as well, just to keep the conversation flowing and going. I'm going to get to as many questions as I possibly can, as many hot topics as I possibly can, and try to spend probably no more than 3 minutes answering each so we can get through them all. So just a quick note, the questions can be something specific to city building or anything related to municipal politics here in Calgary, or you can ask me a question directly like, Kourtney, what's your favorite ice cream flavor? And I will answer vanilla with raspberries on top. So I want to say as well that if tonight inspires you, this campaign is run by volunteers. Ryan has graciously been volunteering his time to get us going. Bonus daughter's been a wonderful help. And really it is 100% run by volunteers. That said, we want to reward and thank our volunteers, so donations as well are always welcome for the campaign. Municipal elections and municipal campaigns are 100% donor funded by private citizens, so there's no corporate money in municipal elections. So that is that. So let me take a minute and I'll introduce myself. So like I said, my name is Kourtney Branagan. I'm choosing to raise my family here in Calgary. We're a blended family. So bonus daughter is in high school and my two biological children are in elementary school. My partner came here 20 years ago from Paris, but has also decided to choose to live and work here in Calgary. And we want this to be a city that our daughters choose to. We've got 2 dogs and a gecko. So we're busy. That said, I've always been a passionate volunteer, and giving back to community is something I want to model for my children. I enjoy hiking, mountain biking, gardening, and outdoor markets in my free time. Over the last 10 years, I've spent some time in a few various roles. I ran my own arts-based business at markets and sold to retail stores across Alberta and British Columbia. I worked as the volunteer manager for Beakerhead 2 years prior to COVID. And I spent up until March of this last year with Rainforest Alberta, a community building and entrepreneurial support organization for the tech and innovation sector. I'm truly committed to supporting people in the communities that they love and want to nurture here in Calgary. I currently sit as a fellow of the Calgary Innovation Coalition, a volunteer role I cherish, continuing to support entrepreneurs in the tech sector. I'm also on the board of directors for a community-based organization that serves low-income Calgarians. From 2014 to 2020, I served on the board of the Haysboro Community Association. In the last 3 years, I was president. And through that work, I came to find myself on multiple working groups with the City of Calgary as a community representative for growth and change in established neighborhoods, which meant I was the community voice advocating for how the community both benefits from the work of the city, but also needs support and help from the city. I also volunteer with the Calgary Women's Center. So what's my why? In all my roles, I've been a catalyst for change. I ask the hard questions. I take action on the pressing issues, and I challenge the way we've always done it. I am rooted in bringing people together, and I'm a community builder through and through. Through my roles, I've seen what happens when the city comes to the table as a willing partner. Amazing things happen. We build innovative public spaces, we host unique world-class festivals, we support economic development across sectors which create opportunities and jobs for entrepreneurs, artists, and neighborhood businesses. I've also seen what happens when volunteer and nonprofit groups are left with funding gaps, knowledge gaps, and lack of direction and guidance from the city, especially with regards to city-owned assets. And at the community level, we have CAs operating in a model devised in the 60s. Our nonprofits are struggling to operate due to the lack of stable and predictable funding, leaving many Calgarians in the lurch. And our up-and-coming sectors could definitely benefit from additional supports to move us forward quicker. Calgary is also facing crises. We've got mental health, addiction, and climate. We cannot ignore these challenges as we look forward. We can't keep operating in silos to solve our problems. We can't keep operating in silos to make change happen. We need to collaborate, and I'm really good at that. Now I get into your questions. So I'm going to take the first question from, I didn't write anyone's name down. So the question I got was, how am I going to balance different communities' needs? So a quick snapshot of Ward 11, it's really diverse in terms of neighborhoods. There are 27 unique communities, and those are represented by 18 different community associations. The east side of the ward captures Riverbend, Douglas Glen, Douglasdale, Quarry Park, all the way to the west side, which captures Garrison Green, Lakeview, goes south to Anderson, and 50th is the cutoff in the north, so captures a lot of the communities that are on both sides of the Elbow Drive and 14th Street corridor. So every community has different challenges and unique needs. We also have transit as a skeleton with the red line through much of the ward. So how do you balance them? I think it's really about not looking at a one-size-fits-all approach, but also helping communities learn from each other. And that's something that I had the benefit of doing when I was president of the Community Association, was working with different communities as well, different volunteers, and talking about sharing resources, sharing knowledge. And I want to continue to foster that between communities. If two unique communities are working on playground builds, I believe they should be sharing the knowledge and resources, quotes. Those are really great things that communities can learn from each other. So building that network is really important to me. But then also understanding what are the challenges. So, one community may need an accessible playground or one that has a focus on senior citizens due to their aging population. And another community may not need a playground yet. So we're over in Garrison Green. Our playgrounds aren't ready to be done yet, but we also have missing crosswalk lines. So we have a lot of vehicles who around our major playground move quite quickly because the crosswalks aren't well marked. So those are the different infrastructure challenges that different communities face, and I think we need to look at them one off. So that's a bit about balancing it, and we can talk more about that. All right. I'm going to pull a hot topic question. Maybe it's not my favorite. Oh, the green line, of course. So I will say I am pro green line. The green line has been challenged, but also creates opportunities for a city. The most important thing for me going forward as we move through the green line process is how the stations are going to interface into neighborhoods. So the green line will hit Quarry Park. There is some commercial development that is waiting on the green line, so we need to recognize that there's interfacing with commercial development. But then we also have 3 communities that are really proximal to that. So Riverbend, Douglas Glen, Quarry, and Douglasdale to some degree as well. And we need to think about making sure that the connections to and from our transit are adequate so that people have the ability to use transit for what they need. I will say that the funding and the phasing for the project continues to present a challenge for Calgarians. I don't think putting it on the shelf and waiting for better times is going to move us forward in the way that we need. We need to act quickly on projects, and we need to be moving towards realizing some of our targets and our goals sooner rather than later. All right, I'll take this question because what's my platform on infrastructure spending? So that kind of ties it back into the green line a little bit. I believe the city is built best when we have partnerships And we get city building efforts from the for-profit sector, the nonprofit sector, citizens, and the city. And it's a joint effort, and every project is going to look different. The city needs to come to the table and talk about how those projects fit into our bigger city picture spending. So as I mentioned about the green line, that public interfacing and how the city contributes to the public interfacing is really important. So when the city is a willing partner, that's when we get those great public infrastructure amenities that we can all partake and enjoy in. So a really good example of it is the East Village. And if you look at the River Walk, that is part of the East Village, that was because CMLC took a lot of the uplift and turned it back into community and public space. So that's the kind of infrastructure spending that I want to see the city focusing and prioritizing. That being said, we also need to look at the different supports for the different economic sectors that we have across our city. So Arts Commons is a good one. We've spent money on Platform, which is the new Innovation Center plus Parkade. So there are initiatives that the city can step forward and lead, and that helps give direction to our future. So, all right. Okay, hot topic question, residential speeds. I believe if there is a house fronting a street, it should have a speed limit of 40. I was out, I hosted a silent auction a couple weekends ago, and I had to go deliver some of the prizes to some people. And so I hit a street in Lake Bonavista, so not a Ward 11 community, but this is going to be across the city. It was 50 until the playground zone, and then it was 50 again. There are still children walking out to school outside of that playground zone, and it was a street that was fully lined by houses and was quite narrow. But because it was a through road or more of a commuter road or an in and out of a neighborhood, it gets a 50 designation. I would be quite happy to bring residential speed limits back to council to talk about that we need to amend it so that more roads are 40. All right. Question from the audience. So I had someone ask me about the K-12 curriculum. Now I want to say the K-12 curriculum is not a municipal issue. Here's what I do think. When we have regressive policy that comes down from any other order of government, it decreases our ability to attract and retain talent in our city. And if we don't want a hollowing out of our talent, we need to have policies across the board at the municipal level, at the provincial level, and at the federal level that attract people who want to live and work in our city. So that is what I'm going to say about the K-12 curriculum. I'm going to say, as a parent of school-age children, I don't support the direction it's going in. I hope that it gets a revisit. But what I really look at are what are the, so what I'm going to focus on here is the implications on how could that hinder our economic prosperity as a province and our economic prosperity as a city. Okay, hot topic. Okay, I'm going to take a question from the audience before I do another hot topic. Okay. What do I think about my competition? Who do I think is my main competitor? Okay, so just lay of the land from what I know, there are 6 other candidates running in Ward 11. So what do I think about my competition? I've met a couple of them face-to-face through Zoom, and some of them I haven't met at all. I'll be perfectly honest, I'm focused on my platform. I'm focused on sharing my vision. I think every candidate is going to bring something unique to the table, something we should be listening and considering. And that's going to be true across all wards. That's going to be true across the mayoral race. And so I don't want to sugarcoat it and be like, I'm going to find something good in everybody. But I do think it's worth listening to perspectives because constituents are listening to those perspectives as well. And for whatever reason, those are resonating with other people and with other residents in the ward. So it is always worth paying attention to. Who do I think is my main competitor? I don't know. We don't get polling. So it's hard to say. If I had to go by lawn signs, I would probably say Devin Dufresne. But I don't know because lawn signs are just one indicator. Social media following is just one indicator. I don't know what kind of polling is going to come out. And I guess it depends on what do you mean by competition. So I know I'm skirting around the issue a little bit, but I think it's really kind of too early to talk about and benchmark myself against any one single person at this point. I would rather just continue with what I believe in, what my values are, what I stand for, and what I want to see for the city, and continue talking with my supporters. All right, another question from the audience. All right, how do I feel about the privatization of city work? No, thank you, is my short answer. Let me talk about why. So, we're going to use snow clearing as an example. So if a part of a pathway gets cleared by a private contractor, and then I as a resident see that snow clearing hasn't been done adequately to my, or I have a concern about it, I phone 311. So then 311 goes to the roads department, or the parks department, or the whomever's department that section of land is under. So just so you know, snow clearing isn't their own department, it is contracted out by different departments. So we go to whichever department it is. Then that department has to phone the contractor. So now we're already we're assuming there are multiple concerns coming in. So this isn't happening within an hour. We're talking about half a day, 2 days perhaps. I hope not. But we get a hold of the contractor. So then the contractor has to, the supervisor has to go out, review the work. Then they have to go and find a crew. It's probably not the same crew as it did before, and it could have snowed in this time. So now, and then it's a reporting back, right? So we've got this the city acting as a middleman, as opposed to the city just being the person who does the work, so that when we call for snow clearing, it goes directly to the department, and the department can directly deploy someone who's in a good position to go clear that area. Also we know with contract workers, especially, generally if you've hired a landscaping company, they're seasonal workers. So it means that they may have not done that piece of property before, that they are probably working in different areas of the city. They're not necessarily assigned the same zone. And again, that accountability piece has to go through so many layers. The contractor's likely not going to come back to that individual to hold them accountable for their work. They're just going to deploy somebody else. And in the end, this is going to add up. So I'm going to say no to privatization of city work. All right, I'm going to take a hot topic question. How are we doing for time? All right, we got lots of time. All right, I'll spend a little more time answering all the questions then. Okay, the arena. And just so you know, I made up all the hot topics, so if it's not hot to you, it's just hot in here, because literally it's hot in here. So, there have been developments around the arena. I need to dig back in. It is coming back to council on July 5th. So I do know that. Why don't I talk? I'm going to back up and say where was I when the arena deal originally came out. So I wasn't pro arena deal. And here's why. We have a lot of city infrastructure who, when it needs upgrading or replacing, comes from our operating budget. And our operating budget is our budget that is generally the most constrained. So this is the one that relies on our property tax revenues or any fees and service fees or fines. In the case of the arena, it is coming out of our operating budget, and any large infrastructure spending not out of our operating budget or capital budget. Any large infrastructure spending comes out of our capital budgets. And I don't know the exact reason why, but if you're replacing an arena and it comes out of capital, and you're replacing a playground and it comes out of operating, it doesn't add up to me. And so as I've asked questions, as I've been talking with people, we are working in an operating model that is from the 80s, when our city had very little community-based infrastructure. Things like our pools, our playgrounds, our libraries, they were all in really, really good condition. So when I think about how our city spends our money, I think we also need to look really hard at our budgeting process and what buckets of money things come from. So that aside, I didn't love the arena deal to start with. I was always sketchy about it. It felt, too good to be true, really, really quick. But at the time I had to say, you know what? Out of 15 people, there are 13 people signing their name off on this, so they most likely have details that I don't have. And I'm going to choose to trust them. I'm going to choose to trust that they see something in this deal that is really, really worthwhile. And my hope is it was that public space. What I'm seeing coming out of the last couple days is that public space component is most likely what's at risk. And so what there was supposed to be around the arena was a giant plaza that was public interfacing. So something like Olympic Plaza or East Village, the River Walk. And it seems like that could potentially be what's in question. And so one of the reasons I can get behind public dollars for partnership projects, as I mentioned earlier, was because there was a public benefit. If that space is going to end up behind a paywall, I definitely don't support the city putting their money towards that. If that quote unquote public space or that plaza space isn't programmed the way that it was intended to be, I have a problem with that. So to me, those are the red flags around the arena deal right now. I know Councillor Woolley raised it. So I'll be watching intently on the 5th to see where that goes. And backing up, I always said, like, look, if the arena deal was a deal, then I would always fight to make sure that that public space was realized and was the best it could possibly be for as many Calgarians as possible. And so I stick to that because I don't know what's actually going to happen over the next month. I'm actually not sure that there's going to be a resolution. It's entirely possible that this gets pushed to an after-election issue. So I just want to say I'm here to work really hard for that public space, for those public dollars. All right, another question. What is my strategy to rectify some of the significant challenges in our city's downtown? Great question. So as I mentioned earlier, the city is built great when multiple players come to the table. So the for-profit sector, the nonprofit sector, citizens, and the city. So there's no one solution, and I think we need to start. I think one of the big things we need to know is that, like, throwing one or two things at the downtown thinking it's going to be a solution isn't. It is going to take hard work. It is going to take years. It's going to take investments and strategy to revitalizing our downtown. And I think the biggest question we need to ask ourselves is, what is the purpose of our downtown? Because when we know our purpose, then we can start making decisions on the direction. And one of the best things I've heard about the downtown, is something I fully support, is making downtown a neighborhood. So neighborhoods are spaces where people are in community with each other. They get to know their neighbors. They feel safe. It's what creates vibrancy and life. It gives a business case for sure for having more public space, more green space, more livable outdoor space in our downtown, which should be attracting the rest of us to come and enjoy their neighborhood. So that is one, for me, that's probably the biggest one, is talking about the downtown as a neighborhood. I think so. To that vein, I do think residential conversion is great. There are significant challenges with residential conversion too. So when a building converts to residential, or even if it reverts to a split, the amount of money the city retains from property tax goes down. So we retain more property tax from a commercial building than we do a residential building. So we need to make sure that that conversion is going to ideally give us the same kind of tax revenue. So we need to make sure that we don't get that hollowing out as well. Now, there's also the case that when you have more people downtown, then you get better economic viability and other businesses can be in place, and that could raise the value of other places. So it's going to always be a fine line and balance that we move towards. I think making downtown a more active network, so more walking, more cycling, more scooting, more transit, I think that is a great way to make it feel more neighborhoodly like, more community like, more friendly. So removing some of the cars. I think we also need to ask ourselves questions about how people are getting there and what they're doing. So this is like a parking versus transit conversation in my mind, is how do we move people like to and from our downtown safely, quickly, efficiently? And so we need to come up, in my mind, with innovative strategies to move people on transit to and from our downtown core. And then I think there's incentives that we can do around arts, around our food industry. And so we've seen really great success when we have street festivals downtown. So you've had, Chinook Blast, which is really, really great. So those are the kind of projects I think that the city can support to bring awareness and attention and attraction into our downtown core. All right, keep the questions coming. Thank you, everyone. I love them. Am I an advocate for using community benefit agreements and social procurement when doing projects like downtown revitalization? Smiley face. I don't know if there was a smiley face in the comment, but I got a smiley face on it and I really love it. So thank you. So there's community benefit agreements, optional amenity agreements. There's a lot of agreements, right, that we make, and social procurement. And I'm going to say to this one, it's going to depend. So it's going to depend on what the structure of that is and who benefits. One of the challenges when I was on the working groups with the City of Calgary and looking at is when we talk about tax uplift in the city and using that tax uplift to do dedicated projects, this is going to create a really unequal city because we know that development and revitalization is not happening equally across our city. So in my mind, we need to make sure that the programs that we're devising are going to benefit our city as an entire whole. So if there is uplift happening in the downtown, can we look at taking a percentage of that uplift to make sure that other community projects and other neighborhood amenities are also being revitalized as a benefit of that as well? Because that was one of the benefits we originally saw with downtown, is that property taxes got to be really low elsewhere because of our great downtown strength. And now we're seeing that in reverse. As the downtown hollows out and those properties go down, other property taxes go up. So if we revitalize downtown, we need to make sure that those benefits spill out into other neighborhoods too and other communities as well, and more than just property tax, especially if we're talking about reinvestment into infrastructure. Social procurement, I would 100% get behind. I think one of the great things about social procurement is it often looks local. We often are then working innovatively with different companies. It's often a great first venture foray. Sometimes it's something they've done before and they're really, really excellent at. So I am totally all behind social procurement. And I think we need to, and I know that there was a social procurement strategy that came to council. And so those are some of the things that we need to continue working towards and looking at as we move forward in the city. So thank you for that question. All right, keep questions coming. I'm going to pull another hot topic issue. Okay, so fund or defund. All right, hold on. I just need a quick drink of water because as the sun is coming around, it's getting nice and roasty. All right, just a quick note, we have half an hour left. So please keep sending your questions in. Thank you for being here tonight. I really appreciate it. Okay, fund or defund. It's not an either or. So this is an and situation. And what am I going to mean by that? One, we need to fund our social service agencies to do the great work that they're experts in. But two, we also need to continue funding our police services so that when they are first responders, they have the capacity to deal with situations that they are generally not trained for. So police officers are well skilled and well versed in policing and for situations that require traditional policing methods. De-escalation is something we can always work towards. I'm going to say that the majority of the calls that when we're talking about fund defund have a mental health component for it. So if we have police officers who aren't trained to recognize that mental health component of it and they are only seeing the social disorder side of it, we have a problem. When we have officers who are continuously dealing with mental health calls and they have no resources or supports to deal with their own mental health, we have a problem. So it's not an either or. It's how are we going to look at this holistically so that we have well-equipped people across the spectrum who can support individuals needing help. And I'm going to say that the same goes for our fire department, right? We have We have a fire department who also go on a lot of medical calls where there's a great number of times a mental health component to it. While EMS is not in our purview, again, we have first responders who they have great clinical skills, right, on how to, how to intubate, how to put IVs in, which drugs to give. But their training is really, really limited on mental health and psychiatric concerns. So in my mind, we need to do both. And I think this is a great opportunity for those organizations to work together and to learn from each other. So that would be my stance on it. And I think what we need to say is, as a city, we value our citizens, no matter what trouble they may be in, and we want to get them the best supports and resources that they need. And that means equipping as many people possible with trauma-informed care. And so that could be our transit operators, that can be our bylaw officers, that can be our police officers, that can be the extension of our social work teams. So it is, we have city crews out across the spectrum who are doing road work, who are doing others, who are doing water work. Any of our city crews, they are part of those eyes on the street. They are part of the solution to the challenges that we're facing as a city. So, and them having, trauma-informed care also is good for our city. All right. Keep the questions coming. I gotta pull a hot topic one. Okay, fluoride. So for some people it's a hot topic and for some people it's not. So I think what makes it a hot topic is the upfront cost of it. So that initial spending to reinstate fluoride. And, why not just create a program? Why not just give out tablets? Why not just anyways? Because that costs more, actually. So when we look at the cost of fluoridation of our water, it is peanuts. Or it's like very little. It's like cents per day, cents per year, actually, I think. Ryan's going to adjust the camera because we're having the sun moving around issue. Tell me if I need to move. Do I need to scoot? I'm going to fall off my chair by the end. This room is lovely and sunny. Hold on. Thanks, everyone. Hold on. Patience. We're going to get back to fluoride in a second here. All right. Are we better? All right. Which way do I need to go? Left or right?
You can get out of the sun. It's okay.
Okay, good. Which way?
Wherever you want.
I'm right here.
I'll sit up. There you go.
You're going to move the camera?
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, everyone. It's getting hot in here. So, fluoride. So, basically what it comes down to is it's a stopgap measure for the lack of dental care that isn't part of our overall public health program that comes federally. So this is a stopgap measure that municipalities have been put in. So if you don't want to pay for fluoride in your city, if you don't want to pay cents per year, then we need to have a conversation with the federal government about it becoming a more comprehensive part of our program. I'm going to say that the people who fluoridation affects the most, so positively, are generally children, so not eligible voters, and also new Canadians, right, who have not, who may not have, or low-income Calgarians who don't have access to a great dental benefit program where you get to go see the dentist once a year and get a fluoride treatment. They're generally still eating, because of low income, their nutrition may not be as good. And it's very likely that those people are not voters. There is a good chance. So when I think about fluoridation, I think about who can benefit the most. Who can benefit from the most from this? And, is $30 million a year worth it over the long run to support those families so that they don't have extenuating dental costs in the long run? Yeah, absolutely. It's the do least harm kind of model and thinking. So I'm pro fluoridation. I'm happy to have a conversation with anyone about it. I know not everybody is. I know, so I'm going to encourage you to go buy filtered water if you can afford it then. I truly believe in taking care of people, and I think this is one small thing that we can do to show care to our citizens, especially kids. So that's what I'm going to say about fluoridation. And I'm going to take a quick hot drink of water because, all right, someone watching, even if you've already submitted one question, you could submit me another question. I'm good with that. Someone asked me about my favorite something. All right, hot topic question, guidebook. Okay, full disclosure, I worked on the guidebook as a citizen, so not as part of any other organization. I was there representing myself, so I came to that work through the planning work that I did with the Hazelbrook Community Association, was invited to be part of the guidebook strategy team to bring that community lens and the community perspective. And so that work started in person. I don't even remember when, like it feels like eons ago. I remember we had sessions, in person, like hundreds of us in a room, and we stuck stickers on things. And anyways, but a lot of the work we came down to was like terminology. So how do we make it more plain language? So we worked really hard on that. And again, it took many different forms and many different iterations. What's really important to remember is the guidebook doesn't change zoning. So what that means is like what can happen on a property. So the guidebook doesn't change zoning. The only way zoning changes, still to this day, and all the communities, that the guidebook touches, which is everyone, is that if you apply for a land use amendment, if you apply for a land use change. So the guidebook doesn't change zoning. The guidebook realizes and puts into a document best practices around our densification goals. So a lot of what's already happening in our city is mirrored in the guidebook, and so that we can have a more comprehensive tool to look at when we're planning neighborhoods. What I love about the guidebook, and what I think wasn't acknowledged till too late in the guidebook discussion, was that we're not often used to thinking about planning our neighborhoods. We kind of do it on this like really ad hoc basis, often for large developments. But it was the first time many of us have been given the thought of like, whoa, wait, I could reimagine my whole neighborhood. That's not a responsibility many of us are given on a regular basis because we're not planners. So that work happens. We move into a neighborhood because we like the look and the feel and the amenities that it offers. And we accept that change is going to happen over time, but we don't necessarily always see ourselves as part of that change. And so the guidebook, in my mind, really challenged that notion that we get to truly have a say in the future of our city. And I love that about the guidebook, but I think there are some big swings and misses in talking about like, who is it going to most affect and where is it going to most affect, and what are the places we need to apply the guidebook the most. And so it's important to remember so that, like I said, zoning isn't going to change. So the only way your neighbor's property is going to change to something different is if your neighbor decides to do that. So if you and your neighbor agree that you both like your detached house, then that's how your neighborhood is going to stay. But you and your neighbor may agree that the property on the corner, could benefit, and let's say it's retail, could benefit from a bit of an uplift. And maybe if it got apartments above it, then the facade would get an uplift and it wouldn't feel so downtrodden in your neighborhood, and it could bring some revitalization. That is what the guidebook hopes to aim, and like those are the conversations we want to have around the guidebook. So I'm pro guidebook. I always have been. You can probably find all of my council conversations on it when I presented to council. What I want to take from the guidebook is there are communities in Ward 11 who are going through the local area plan process. I'm committed to working with them through that local area plan process, the ones that are ongoing and the ones that will be coming. And again, going back to how you're going to balance different community needs, those are conversations we get to have at the local area plan level to talk about, what are the benefits and amenities that communities are needing so people can stay in their neighborhoods and have a really, really great quality of life, and recognizing that different neighborhoods are going to have different points of view on that, and it's always going to be about finding a little bit of a balance, and we're going to all have to make compromises to some degree. All right, I see Bonus Daughter furiously writing questions, so whoo, thanks, good questions coming on in. Hold on. Oh yeah, what's your stance on the city covering for other government levels not adequately funding areas within their jurisdiction, i.e. affordable housing, fire response, medical calls? So we have two decisions. So fire response is is, so I'll say affordable housing. All three orders of government in my mind should be looking at it. Fire response is the jurisdiction of the city, and medical so fire response and medical calls go hand in hand, right? Because if we don't have enough ambulances in our city, which is Alberta Health Services, so the provincial government, then fire has to step in to be first responders. So what is my stance? So we have two options. We can either just say, well, you're not giving us enough, and therefore we're not going to do it, and we're going to, stomp our foot and be like, Or we can say, wow, we have a duty of care to our people, and so we need to work to find room in our budget to fund this. All the while we're advocating to those different orders of government to talk about how it impacts us as a city. All the while advocating, with our citizens to advocate to different orders of level of government that is a value to them and a priority to them. So this comes down to having those really open and honest conversations about what do we need as a city and why we need it. And yes, how do we balance the priorities in our city? So I don't think we should turn our back on people because the other orders of government aren't funding things. That being said, I'm not sure, we need to also draw a line in the sand of how much we're willing to do so that it's not taken for granted what we are doing. So great question. Okay, next question. My favorite restaurant or place to eat within Ward 11. Ooh, good one. Okay, so if I had to go for dinner right now, I'd probably go to the Goose on Elbow Drive. That's probably my favorite, and they're newer and they're awesome and they're great. I'm just gonna stay still. You're gonna move the camera. Okay, we're good. So that is one of my favorite. Also Empire Provisions, super great. Their pulled pork is amazing. It's like our perfect, like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to make for dinner. And we go buy pulled pork and we heat it up and it's so great. They also have these root beer cookies. They're like pre-made. You just gotta like put them in the oven. They're made with like Annex Ale root beer. Oh my God, they're heavenly. So, I really like to eat, just so everybody knows. So, also leave in the comments, because I'm gonna go look at the comments later, your favorite place to eat in Ward 11, so I can go check it out. Ooh, what's your opinion on the Midtown Station project? Okay, so for anyone watching and they're like, what's Midtown Station? So this is a proposed station in the Fairview industrial area. So point of reference, kind of like behind Campers Village on McLeod Trail. That area, Cactus Clubby, there's the Fabric Land. Anyway, so one of the developers in the city owns a good chunk of that land. And their thought is if they're going to redevelop this land, they actually want a transit stop there. And I'm kind of like, if you want to pay as a developer for the transit stop, I love it. It also it'll give Fairview residents an access over to transit. So I know a lot of it was conceptual, pre-design. They did take feedback on the on-off ramps. I'm gonna say more transit, the better. Let's have some transit. Let's talk about what that is. Now, yeah, there's concerns around transit, bringing in unhoused populations into communities. That's definitely something we need to address. I don't think we should deny transit because of that. I think we need to get to the root cause of why we're having those issues. And we need to address those issues independent of building city infrastructure. So I don't think something should be held back because of that. All right. How are we doing for time? Oh, we're doing so good. I love all these questions. Someone asked me more favorite questions, because those are the easy ones. All right. Okay. Hot topic, economic diversity. So we need to diversify our economy. So I like to make a joke that I don't want a steak on a solar-powered barbecue. Now, I haven't experienced a steak on a solar-powered barbecue, so you could prove me wrong. I think we need to move towards green energy, so I'm going to say that. When I think about economic diversity, though, I don't think it's about necessarily what we're moving away from. I think it's what we're complementing with. So I think it's more on how do we make space for all economic sectors to thrive and prosper in Calgary, and that those sectors support each other because of their existence. So I think, you know, the art scene and the food scene is a really, really good natural thing. You go for dinner and you go to a show. But I also think the arts can support nonprofits and how we do education and training around, you know, from the nonprofit sector into the art sector and move more people into that industry. I'm going to call them neighborhood businesses instead of local businesses. Just because I think everyone's local these days, but who's neighborhood? So when I think about neighborhood businesses, I think about they are the people who are donating to nonprofit silent auctions, to sports teams, to hockey teams, to gymnastics clubs. They're the people supporting, you know, our sporting sector, our nonprofit sector. So like those are the natural collisions that start to happen in all of those different sectors, and then it becomes cyclical. And so I think when we talk about economic diversification in Calgary, we need to think really hard about making space for all of those things, and that we don't need to have just one thing that is the backbone of our community or the backbone of our economy. I believe truly that there's like, we don't need like to cut the pie smaller, we just need to make a bigger pie, to steal from my friend Jim. So we bake more pies. I actually don't really like pie, so I would maybe bake more cakes. But in any analogy, I think what it is talking about that it's not a competition to who does the most. It is really that collaboration component to how do we all work together, and how do we all support each other. And I think that it is happening, and I think we need to share those stories out and tell those really, really good stories. And so where does the city come in and play that component? I think the city becomes part of that storytelling component. I think the city can share out the neighborhood businesses, our tech businesses, our arts-based businesses, our food stories. We can do a better job of telling the stories of our local entrepreneurs so that we all have a better understanding of who's giving their heart and soul into our city and the work that they're doing, and bringing really great value and creating jobs. So I see the city being a really great player in that way. And then always revisiting the model of permitting, licensing, and fees, to talk about how do we enable entrepreneurs. All right. Okay, my favorite park in the city or in Ward 11. Oh man, that's so hard. Okay. I'm always going to have a soft spot for Haysboro, for the natural playground there, because I worked on that. That was kind of like my first foray into like, wow, this is amazing and super hard at the same time, but I'm just going to persevere through it with my two tiny children. But I've also made the most amazing lifelong friends in the whole wide world. And so I still have like definitely a soft spot for the Haysboro Natural Playground. Otherwise, I really love going down into Weaselhead. I turned 40, so I'm 100% for sure super interested in birds now and wildlife in general. So just nerding out over here on that. Thank you, Ryan, for laughing at that over there. I see you laughing in the background. I saw an eagle around the reservoir the other day, and it was so amazing. I love being around the reservoir. It's super amazing. And I just want to give a shout out because like now we have Carbon Park in Ward 11, and it is awesome over there. The lagoon. Ryan's nodding. He's like, yeah, that's my park. Thanks for the shout out. So I can't pick just one. So there you go. I can sometimes be indecisive around picking favorite things. I also don't have a favorite child, just for the record. So, I'm gonna give a shout out to St. Patrick's Island. So again, that came through East Village, Uplift, is a really kind of cool, shining example of like what can be done when the city like reinvests itself reinvest into itself. So that's kind of my favorite. There are also parks I have not explored in the city. I took a wrong turn the other day, and I accidentally drove into Pierce Estates Park, and I had never been there before, and now I need to go back. So it's on my summer list of places to go. And I did visit Bowness over the winter, but I think I need to do Bowness in the summer again. So I haven't done Bowness in the summer in a long time. So my grandparents used to live over in Bowness and Montgomery area, so we spent a lot of time over there as kids skating on the lagoon. So some family there. All right, how are we doing for time? I have no more hot topics. Oh man, that sun. And any more questions before I ramble some more? Okay, hold on, I'm gonna take a drink of water then. All right, so why don't I tell you about like what my 3 key priority areas for Calgary are as it stands today. And I'm gonna say that like as things shift between now and election day on October 18th, it's totally possible that some of those priority areas may change because something might come up. So policy might come forward that I don't need to work on or something. I don't actually think that, but one can always hope that magic will happen. So my 3 key priority areas. So one is investing back into neighborhoods. So like I mentioned before, a lot of the amenity infrastructure in Ward 11 is aging and it does need replacing. And I am not saying that the city needs to upfront all of those costs, but I think we need to make it easier for volunteers to get access to funds, to raise funds and get supports from the city to do those things. And I do think the city should be coming to the table with some funding, and so we need to revisit that model, which is kind of more of a long-term strategy. So we need to have like some short-term strategies. So how do we help the people who are doing the work now? And then what are the long-term strategies so we can help the people in the future? So that's one. So one I talked about, right, that economic diversity, so that there is prosperity and opportunity across all economic sectors. And so that's the city being nimble and understanding, you know, which sectors may need a boost one year over another, or where is that push-pull and where is that tension, and what are those decisions that need to be made, again, short term, and then how do we put projects and policies in place long term. So that's the big one. And then the third piece really is just how do we talk together? How do we learn from each other and how do we collaborate? So the city has questions right now on, how do you engage with the city? So I think that's a really important and vital question to ask. And I would challenge that we need to go back is like, what is the purpose of engagement? And that may vary from project to project. I have been in the position where I've had to take my children to city council with me to present, and it was so awkward because unfortunately some of the people sitting around the horseshoe, who are people who are sitting in council today, gave me some of the most disgusted looks I've ever seen in my life. That has to change. We need to think about how we are welcoming people to talk to elected representatives, both at the council table and in public. So I've said things, and I will commit to being in community with people. So I really believe in campaigning like you're going to lead. So that means showing up to community events, showing up where people are at. So like right now the food trucks are all across the city. So showing up at the food trucks to be able to meet and connect with people, being at the dog park to connect and talk with people, being at community associations events. I also think it's about sharing those things too, so that people know where to find each other and be in community with each other. So I'm committed to being available on meeting people where they're at with the needs that they have. So that may be a disability, that may be children, that may be a language barrier. So I'm committed to exploring those ways and asking my colleagues to explore that as well. All right. Great question. What's your favorite thing about being part of our city? And sorry, I'm kind of leaning back because the sun is coming around. So my favorite thing about being part of my city is that it's full of passionate people building community, and I've got to dip my toes and dip my fingers into some of those communities and see the amazing work that is happening. I've got to, lead on some projects, and I've got to support some projects. And so for me, I think that's what it boils down to, is like recognizing and seeing people for like, I'm borrowing this from someone who borrowed this time, talent, treasure, who are investing into our city, either, you know, as a volunteer, as a business. I think there's so many different ways to give back to our city. And having had my chance to dip fingers and toes into some of those different communities, I'm so inspired. And when I can, like, I love when I can, like, find two people and, like, throw them together and, like, devise a collaboration. It's 5 minutes, son. It's 5 minutes. That's, to me, like, what I walk away with. Oh, man. The sun moves. Actually, the sun doesn't move. The earth moves. Did you know that? Yay for science. To me, that is what excites me. That is, so when I talked earlier about being a catalyst, like I want to be a connector and a catalyst for those discussions and those collaborations happening. And really just putting people in a place where they can work on those projects and be enabled and move them forward to do great things in our city. So it's as much about kind of like being in the right place at the right time to push those things forward, and then stepping back at the right place and the right time to let those things happen. So that's my favorite thing about being in Calgary. Also, I truly think we're a beautiful city, and we have time, talent, and treasure here. And I'm gonna get all weepy. I'm gonna be the counselor that cries. So that's it. All right. So we have a few minutes left. So I'm gonna repeat a couple things. I'm gonna tell you a couple more things. I'm not gonna do that. You're just gonna get all sunshiny glory me. It's all good. They just have to listen.
Do you wanna like step over here?
Well, am I super bright and like unable to see me? All right. Okay, friends, just bear with me for the last 5 minutes of the sweat-a-thon. Woo! Okay. I could also be known for mom jokes and crying. That will be my legacy. Yeah. Okay. So thank you everyone for spending their time with me tonight. I really appreciate everyone coming on, asking thoughtful and insightful questions. I really, really appreciate that. So a couple things. Stay connected. You can sign up for my newsletter on the website. You can book a phone call with me if you want to have a one-on-one. You can do that through the website. Everything's on the website. Just in case you didn't know, it's all on the website. KourtneyBranagan.com. All right. Just search my name, Kourtney with a K. So you can sign up for the newsletter. Stay connected. Reach out. And like I said earlier, if you signed in late, this campaign is run by volunteers. This campaign is just run by passionate, dedicated people who believe in the message, who are sharing their amazing ideas with me every time that we're out. So if you want to really pick my brain, or you really want me to hear yours, come volunteer. That is our awesome one-on-one time together. So please volunteer. It takes a village. It really, really does. And again, I'll remind you that the campaign is run all by donations by individuals. So any of the literature that we pass out, any of the marketing that we do, any of the signage that we buy, it is 100% funded by donations by people. Now, I as a candidate get to put some money into, and I'm committed to funding up to the maximum allowable amount. I recognize I'm in a privileged position to be able to do that, but I also want to make sure that I do that, because I am aware of the ask, and I'm aware that the ask is big and great, and there is no guarantee and no certainty, but for those who have donated, and for those considering donating, I truly appreciate it. Your support is really, really welcomed, and I'm really, really grateful for it. I also have lawn signs, so if you would like a lawn sign, you can also order that through the website. This website is such a wonderful, powerful thing. So that is where we're at. Thank you everyone for joining me tonight. Enjoy the week. I have no idea how I'm going to stay cold. Air conditioning. We don't have air conditioning. We're going to live in our basement. So, I just want to reiterate, thank you so much for coming out. Thank you for being interested in your city, interested in its future. and willing to, ask the hard questions of the people who could be leading it. So thank you so much. And with that is 8 o'clock, and we will see you another time.